The rain fell in soft, steady sheets that evening, painting the city in silver and gray. Most people hurried past, their umbrellas tilted low, their minds focused on getting home before the downpour worsened. But Daniel Hayes didn't rush. The single father walked hand in hand with his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, carrying a small grocery bag filled with soup cans and tissues. Lily had caught a cold, and Daniel wanted nothing more than to tuck her into bed and read her a story before she drifted off to sleep. They turned down a quiet alley to save time, their footsteps echoing against the wet pavement. That's when Lily stopped, tugging gently at his sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered, her wide eyes scanning the shadows, "did you hear that?" Daniel froze, listening. At first, all he heard was the whisper of rain, but then, faint and fragile, came the sound of a sob. It was soft, broken, and hidden, like someone trying not to be found. Daniel's instincts stirred. He squeezed Lily's hand protectively and followed the sound to the back of a closed cafe. Under the small awning sat a young woman, soaked to the bone, her arms wrapped around herself. Her clothes clung to her, and her hair hung in wet strands across her pale face. When she looked up, her red-rimmed eyes flickered with fear. "Please," she said hoarsely, "don't call anyone. I'll go soon." Daniel knelt down, his voice calm and gentle. "You don't have to go anywhere. Are you hurt?" She shook her head, though the faint bruise on her cheek told a different story. Lily, without hesitation, stepped forward and held out her umbrella. "You can have this," she said softly. The woman blinked, startled by the small act of kindness. For a long moment, the rain was the only sound between them. Daniel saw something in her eyes, a pain he recognized, a loneliness he'd once carried after his wife's death. He knew walking away would haunt him. "Come on," he said quietly, extending his hand. "You can't stay out here in this weather. Let us help." The woman hesitated, then whispered, "My name's Emma." And that was the moment Daniel's life, and hers, began to change forever. Daniel's small apartment was warm and smelled faintly of cinnamon and laundry detergent. The hum of the heater filled the silence as Emma sat wrapped in a blanket on the couch, her damp hair clinging to her cheeks. Lily, already in her pajamas, peeked from behind her father's arm, curious about the quiet stranger now sitting in their living room. Daniel handed Emma a steaming bowl of soup and a dry towel. "Eat," he said softly. "You'll feel better." She hesitated, then took a slow sip, her trembling hands barely steady enough to hold the spoon. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice raw from crying. "I didn't mean to trouble you. I just needed a place to stop for a moment." Daniel shook his head. "It's no trouble. Everyone needs help sometimes." Lily climbed onto the chair beside her, her small legs swinging. "Are you a princess who ran away?" she asked innocently, tilting her head. Emma let out a faint, unexpected laugh, the sound fragile but real. "Not quite, sweetheart," she said. "More like someone who got lost." As the rain continued to tap against the window, Emma's story slowly came out in pieces. She had left an abusive relationship, escaping in the middle of the night with nothing but a small bag and her phone. She'd been wandering for 2 days, too afraid to go to a shelter because her ex knew where most of them were. Her voice broke as she spoke, and Daniel felt his chest tighten with empathy. He saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the way she flinched at every small noise. He recognized that kind of fear, the same hollow helplessness he'd felt after losing his wife. When Lily finally drifted to sleep on the couch, Daniel handed Emma a pillow and an extra blanket. "You can stay here tonight," he said quietly. "The couch is yours." She looked up at him, her eyes glistening with tears. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she whispered. Daniel hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Because no one should be alone in the rain." Emma's gaze softened, and for the first time that night, she exhaled, like someone who hadn't breathed freely in a long time. Over the next few days, Emma's presence quietly blended into Daniel and Lily's routine, as if she had always belonged there. She helped cook breakfast in the mornings, humming softly as the smell of pancakes filled the kitchen, and walked Lily to school when Daniel had to leave early for his shifts at the garage. The apartment, once silent and heavy with the echo of loss, now felt alive again, warm laughter replacing the emptiness that had lingered for years. Daniel often caught himself watching Emma as she laughed with Lily, noticing how the sadness in her eyes was slowly giving way to something gentler, more hopeful. One evening, as they all sat down for dinner, a knock sounded at the door. Daniel wiped his hands on a towel and went to answer it, expecting a neighbor. Instead, standing there was a tall man in a black jacket, his expression cold and hard. "I'm looking for Emma," he said flatly. "She's my fiancée." She ran off. Daniel's jaw tightened instantly. "You need to leave," he said firmly. "She doesn't want to see you." The man's eyes narrowed. "And who are you?" "Her savior." His tone dripped with venom. Before Daniel could reply, Emma appeared behind him, her face pale as she froze in place. "Jake," she whispered. "Please just go. I can't do this anymore." Jake stepped forward, his voice low and threatening. "You think hiding behind some stranger and his kid will keep you safe?" Daniel's protective instincts flared. He positioned himself between them, his voice steady but sharp. "You take one more step, and I'm calling the police." The air hung heavy with tension before Jake finally sneered and turned away, muttering threats under his breath as he disappeared into the night. Emma's knees buckled, and Daniel caught her before she fell. "He won't hurt you again," he said softly, his arms still steady around her trembling frame. She looked up at him through tears. "Why are you doing this for me?" she asked, her voice breaking. Daniel met her gaze, his eyes filled with quiet conviction. "Because no one heard you cry that night," he said gently. "But I did." In that moment, something unspoken passed between them, trust, gratitude, and the beginning of something deeper. Weeks passed, and the sharp bite of winter slowly melted into the first warmth of spring. The world outside began to bloom again, and so did the small, fragile family that had formed inside Daniel's apartment. Emma found a part-time job at a nearby bakery, her laughter now echoing through the tiny kitchen each morning as she packed Lily's lunch or teased Daniel about his unshaven face. The darkness that once clouded her eyes had lifted, replaced by a quiet glow of peace. Daniel, too, found himself smiling more easily, his evenings no longer haunted by silence. One Sunday afternoon, the three of them sat by the park, Lily chasing butterflies while Daniel and Emma watched from a bench. "It feels strange," Emma murmured, her voice soft, "to wake up and not feel afraid anymore." Daniel looked at her, his heart tightening in a way that was both painful and beautiful. "You deserve peace, Emma," he said gently. "You fought hard for it." She turned to him with a small smile. "I didn't fight alone." That night, after Lily had fallen asleep clutching her stuffed bear, Emma found Daniel in the living room fixing one of Lily's broken toys. She hesitated before speaking. "You saved me," she whispered. "That night in the rain, I thought no one would ever notice me again. But you did. You and Lily, you gave me something I didn't think I'd ever have again, a home." Daniel looked up, his eyes meeting hers. "You saved us too," he said softly. "Lily hasn't laughed like this since her mother passed. And I'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone care." The silence between them was warm, filled with everything neither had the courage to say. Slowly, Emma reached for his hand, and Daniel didn't pull away. The rain began to fall outside again, light and familiar, tapping gently against the windows, the same sound that had first brought them together. But now it felt different. It wasn't lonely or cold anymore. It was a reminder that sometimes, in the quietest moments and the darkest nights, a single act of kindness can rewrite the course of three broken lives. And in that gentle rhythm of rain, a new chapter of love quietly began.